Okay, so it's been a really interesting past week, months, year in the gaming industry because everyone is buying up everything. Everyone is saying that you should buy this, you should buy that. You've got people who never run companies before, never even been in a leadership position, but are telling, hey, you should spend billions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars of this or that. And I just find it interesting. But one thing that I think is very interesting are people's takes when it comes to what Nintendo is doing. And I feel personally, Nintendo has saw the industry and kind of what's going on with these acquisitions, with these buyings, with all this different type of stuff, and is preparing for exactly what has been happening. I think that even dating back to when the late Iwata was here, he was seeing what was happening with the industry. And I feel that the Nintendo Switch was not only a response to that, but also a way for them to kind of consolidate and make things more future-proof for them in the future to compete with all of these entities like Microsoft and like Sony and like Embracer Group, or like all these companies that are going to go out there and buy up all these different studios or IPs and everything. So I think that Nintendo has been preparing for exactly what is happening, and I'm going to break down and kind of go over a couple different things here in addition to some stuff that I feel that they need to work on as well. And I think that it's going to be very interesting to break this down step by step here. But before we get into that, what's good, everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell to get my videos first. Now let's go ahead and get into the first thing here. Now these are all topics that I've discussed kind of differently or freely on other videos, but this is the first time that I think that I'm putting it kind of all together here. So let's talk about the first thing, and that is major entities buying up devs plus IPs. We know that we just saw what happened with Square Enix and the Embracer Group and what's going on there. We saw with Bethesda, we saw with Bungie, we've seen with multiple other studios getting bought up, Insomniac. All sorts of stuff is happening in this industry and things are changing. I can't find it, or I'm not sure if I can find it, but I saw a graph where like there's only a few entities that own most of the major development studios and everything. Everything is getting consolidated. Everything is getting put under a number of different roofs. You know, it's just like, you know, Microsoft, Embracer, Take-Two, Sony. A lot of stuff is getting consolidated. Even before that, we had EA buying up stuff like BioWare, getting exclusive licenses and things like that. This is nothing new to the industry. So I think that Nintendo has seen that more now than ever. I think that they were unprepared in the Wii U era, and it obviously kind of caught them a little bit off guard because they really tried to go out there and get third-party support and kind of do what was they felt was right at the same time, and it just ended up blowing up in their face more so than anything. And even with the Nintendo 3DS, a successful system, it still ended up blowing up in their face because they had some Western support, but then it all just dissipated as smartphones and as free to play and as all the other stuff kind of came in and took away a lot of that market that Nintendo did have and that developer support that Nintendo had on the Nintendo DS and previous Nintendo portable systems. So I think that with the Nintendo Switch, Nintendo saw what was happening there and decided they need to build that foundation with their IPs and what they're going to do and their specialized games. And I think that they've been doing that now since 2016, 2017, when the Switch was really starting to get going. And especially after they saw success with the initial couple years on there, I think they doubled down and said, no, we're going to go in and go back in again. And we're seeing more things that's kind of showing that's exactly what they're doing. So one thing that I've noticed is that the cutting back of new IPs and thinking of new gameplay ideas for these IPs. Now, we do have some new IPs on the Nintendo Switch, but they're of the smaller category. They're not of the major category. We do have Astral Chain, which is a major one. We have ARMS, which is also a major one, but there hasn't been a lot. And what Nintendo's been doing instead is taking the IPs that they know can be profitable, not just sell a certain amount, but be profitable. What you invest into it, how much it costs to develop it, and what you get out of it, and how long you sell it for. So those are the things that a lot of gamers, it kind of like goes right over their head. They think sales, 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 but you also have to think how much are you making off of it? Because if you're selling something for $20 and it costs $30 to actually make, you can sell a lot of them, but you're not actually making any profit off of that because it's costing you more than what you're making off of it. And gamers sometimes don't realize that. They just look at, oh, well, you sold this much, so therefore successful. And it's not always that way, especially with a lot of these other IPs, which is why some people are confused why Square Enix sold Tomb Raider and sold Deus Ex and all of these old IPs, because the profitability of those IPs aren't very good based off of what they've already done in multiple games with multiple years that cost a lot to make and a lot of overhead with all the developers, thousands and all that different type of stuff, marketing plans and everything. It's just ridiculous. So I think that Nintendo has kind of been seeing that and almost kind of took the same as like the Capcom plan, right? That's what Capcom did to really save their business, double down on what they do really well, which is like Resident Evil and Monster Hunter. Double down on those, and you have Devil May Cry here and there, you have a Mega Man here and there, you have some new stuff, but for the most part, Capcom isn't putting out a bunch of new IPs left and right, back to back. They're just making all of their IPs that they already have as good as it can possibly be. Got a new Devil May Cry, that's really good too, and that's what Nintendo's been doing, and that strategy has worked absolutely incredible for them. Back on the GameCube, they did try to do new IP after new IP, Custom Robo and Chibi Robo and all this different stuff, Pikmin and all these different things, and none of those actually ended up turning out to be something major, despite having some really cool gameplay ideas and really good games, just be it that. So I think that Nintendo has kind of learned from that and kind of learned from what they are doing there and doubling down and investing on stuff that not only is going to have a future and could potentially grow and go up and up, but also is very profitable based off of what they put into it. So I think that that was one of the things that Nintendo definitely has been doing for preparing for like what is happening right now, to build up those IPs and to have a variety of different games in different genres to where they can compete despite not having all this third-party support and all this other stuff that people are just buying up. Now, another thing to kind of piggyback off of that is the investing of $1 billion into the game development and workforce. Like Nintendo just flat out said that on their investors report, said, hey, look, we're investing about $1 billion into it. We're getting ready clearly for the next generation of what they're going to be doing with the Switch. That's going to take time. That's going to take money. That's going to take effort. So instead of going out there and spending all that on all these other companies and saying, oh, we're going to go ahead and bring in all these other people that might not fit our culture and just absorbing all of this stuff that just might not work, why do that when you can actually build from within? You can go out and hire the best, or what you feel is the best, people that are anxious for that first shot, that opportunity, that are going to bust their butt in order to get that opportunity. That's how The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was made. A lot of the younger guys that really wanted to show that they can do something, the next producer could come from you investing into that and giving these new people a chance, and also investing into what you want to develop, investing into a wide variety of IPs and different developers that you can bring on, that you can hire to make what you need to make, and expanding your own internal workforce. We can see it kind of like a microcosm. We can kind of look at it with Xenoblade, and we can look at it with Monolith Soft. Their growth obviously is smaller than Nintendo's growth, as Monolith Soft is a part of Nintendo, but that growth that they've done, you can clearly see how the quality has been dramatically ramped up compared to what they did with Xenoblade Chronicles the original, Xenoblade Chronicles X, and now Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. 2 is a little bit of a side thing because that was not developed by the full strength, but anytime that they have their full strength, you can see how much more impressive they've gotten each time around. And Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is definitely the pinnacle of them investing in themselves, not needing to go out and hire X, Y, and Z person and work on this and that. They're working on what they're going to do in order to build and get better, and you can clearly see that. And I think that Nintendo is also doing that as well with their own within intrinsically, and not worrying about having to go do this and that. And on top of that, there's no need. I've told people this before, and I'll say it again. Nintendo has a bunch of dormant IPs that could use rebooting, that can be successful if the money, time, and effort was there. They have Golden Sun, they have F-Zero, they have Star Fox, they have Kid Icarus. They have a bunch of games that could work out in today's day, but the actual time investment and also the ideas for new gameplay have to come there. And I think that this $1 billion game development investment and in the workforce is going to breed something out of that. There's going to be new games, new ideas, new stuff. And I think that That's what I'm most excited for Nintendo going forward in the future. Plus, you can also say, hey, look, they have a new R&D facility that they're going to be building that's going to be done in a number of years. They're investing in that as well, so they can do that research and development. So they can actually come up with the ideas that's going to power them throughout the next 10 years, 20 years, whatever the case is. Now, with all that being said, it all sounds good, right? Sounds really good. But there's some stuff that they need to work on. And I think that this stuff is stuff that they are actively working on, but can definitely do a better job considering what they've made over the course of the Nintendo Switch's life for the next generation. So future hardware viability for developers. I mean, we've seen what Steam Deck is doing. Obviously, what they did is nice. It's advanced. It's good. I think that Nintendo needs to look into making sure that when they do release their next system, that it does have a bit more tools for developers to work around with, and maybe just a tad bit more future proof. Now, it was tough though, because I think that at the time that they were developing the Nintendo Switch, the Tegra X1 was the best type of chip that they can use. The newest chips and the stuff that the Steam Deck is using is all newer things. So there's no way that Nintendo could have had access to that type of technology, and there's no way that it could have been affordable at a consumer grade level for Nintendo to mass produce this type of thing and get it out to as many people that want to play Mario and Zelda and the craziness that Nintendo has when it comes to their games. But I do think that now at this point, especially working with some new R&D, with the money that they have, and now knowing with Nvidia that this is a good idea, this is going to be successful, people want this type of hybrid device, now is the best time to really kind of put a little bit more into what they're going to do, a little bit more RAM than what you thought that you could do, a bit more when it comes to the hardware. So I think that the viability of that hardware is going to be key going forward in the future. Now, next up is more affordable cartridge size for games. I mean, it does seem like prices have went down a little bit, but we still don't have any word on how much it costs or if developers are more willing to use 32GB cartridges for their games. We're seeing more third-party developers just kind of not put out stuff on the Nintendo Switch in general, which I did expect, but we're seeing a lot of developers also even get better with their compression. But I would love to see Nintendo really kind of work on that in the future and make sure that a 32GB cartridge or even a 64GB cartridge is available at a good price. Now, I'm not confident in this because we really haven't been hearing much, and I still doubt by the time that even the next generation comes for Nintendo that 64GB cartridges will be normal or will be affordable. But I do think, at least I'm hoping, that maybe 32GB cartridges will be the price of what a 16GB was, and it won't be some type of big discrepancy between the prices for the higher gig cartridges. So I'm hoping that they can cut that back dramatically, which it should, based off of when the Switch first launched and based off of when I think that their next system is coming. It's going to be multiple years, almost a decade for the most part. So I think that the prices definitely should have went down by now at this point, if they haven't already. I mean, they could be down, and Nintendo could be working on different things to lower those costs, just because like any tech, stuff always goes down. But also advance that cartridge tech, make it quicker, make it faster, do what you need to do, but not raising the price a lot. It's tough. It's a lot to ask for, but I do feel that cartridges are a better form of media than what we've got right now, where you're installing everything. If Nintendo can ever get cartridges to the point to where you can get a lot of space for a good price on there, and you don't have to worry about installing, that is a major advantage over every other big system on the market, whether that's the Steam Deck, whether that's Xbox, PlayStation, PC. Having that cartridge and having it play off there and having the speeds fast enough to actually play to where the loading times aren't crazy and all that, that will be a big benefit for Nintendo going forward. And of course, collectors who want to actually own at least somewhat something of their game to sell it later, or just to have it and not have to worry about downloading something online and all of that. Now, moving on to the next thing, obviously the online network and infrastructure. This is something that Nintendo's been working on. I feel that they are getting that better, but I think that definitely working on that more and investing back into the online infrastructure, which they did say that they're doing as well, is going to be key going forward in the future. So for example, there was a game, Redout 2, that's coming out, and for some reason it's half the amount of players online as the other, versions of the game, which I'm not sure if that's because the development, they just didn't want to spend that money to get it going, because we've seen games have plenty of players online in racing or whatever the case is on the Nintendo Switch, or if it's because of some of the network issues that they're running into, or the development. I'm not sure what it is, but getting their network up to speed and better and the infrastructure better is going to be key, which they are working on. The NPLN structure is good. It's worked for stuff like Monster Hunter Rise, for example, and I think that going forward, games are going to work really well on there. And Nintendo Switch Sports, I think despite it not using the new one, from what we understand, data mining and all that, it still runs pretty good, with my only one exception being bowling. That one doesn't run as smooth as the other ones, but everything else seems really good when it comes to it, as long as you're playing against somebody with a good connection and not using like the broke budget Wi-Fi that some people will be using to play Nintendo Switch games online, or at least their brother or sister streaming Netflix or something like that. Now, last but definitely not least, continue building value with the Nintendo Switch Online and the Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack. I think that they've expanded quite a bit in a very short amount of time. People were very angry when Nintendo Switch Online first launched, and even when Nintendo Switch Online Plus expansion pack launched. Both times people were up in arms about it's not good enough, no matter the price, whatever the case is. But now I think with the N64 games rolling out, with the Genesis games rolling out, with the different DLCs that you're getting, because you can get the Animal Crossing, you can get Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and you can also get the Octo expansion. All that stuff is building, and they're going to continue to build upon that, but definitely building more value with that and kind of getting on a regular schedule where people can really expect, hey, this, and this each month. That's going to be very key. Like having, hey, you have 2 Genesis games, you have 2 Super Nintendo games, you have 2 NES games, you have 1 N64 game every single month, and having that schedule, that would be the ultimate type of saying, okay, well, yeah, now this is really worth it for everybody there. Now, I'm not a old school type of replay old games over and over game type of guy, but I think that it's definitely something they need to continue working on. And I feel that they're on the right track. There's a few different things, but they're on the right track with NSO and the NSO Plus. So those are my thoughts on what Nintendo's been doing to prepare for exactly what is happening here. I think that they're on the right track. They're obviously selling a lot. They sold the most systems in the Q1 of 2022 as well. So they're not really slowing down too much. The only slowdown that's happening is because there's a chip shortage right now, and they can't produce as many as they can sell, because there's a lot of people that want a Nintendo Switch OLED and can't get one, just because they're selling as fast as they can produce them. So that's the only thing that's slowing the Nintendo Switch down right now at this point in the year 5+. So I think that this is going to keep going, and of course they can prepare and get ready for the next generation and when they're going to do that. But those are my thoughts on all of this. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and we will see you for the next video. Peace.